All right, folks, it is time for our weekly overview. And I think that after today, as I've mentioned in my past few videos, I'm going to be doing videos related to the remaining aspects in the sign of Aries that are coming up, because that Mars's transit through Aries will be important as we head through May, and then the Mercury communication cycle in Aries, etc., coming up. But I think that after today, I might take a break for a little bit for 2 or 3 days before we resume all that, because there's a fair amount of content with the last couple of videos and this one already. So that's, over a couple of hours. So I'm gonna let us have the time to digest what we need to digest and then proceed forward. Plus, this is going to be an interesting and ruminative week. At least I would imagine that might be the best way to use it. As we look ahead this particular week, and that's the week of April the 22nd, we've got the full moon tomorrow on April the 23rd in Scorpio. I did the full moon in Scorpio video yesterday, so that is already there. We've got Mercury going direct in Aries on April the 24th. I referred to this and also gave you a sense of, already in a sense, an overview of this week with this idea of moving through this birth canal as we finally come out this week of the eclipse Mercury retrograde period we entered around the middle of March, right? Mercury goes direct on Wednesday, the 24th. And if we give Mercury 3 or 4 days to, give me a sec, is it the 24th or is it the 25th? Am I talking rubbish? It's the 25th. Sorry about that. So tomorrow, Tuesday, is the full moon in Scorpio. It's going direct on Thursday. Mercury, oh God, one more day. I was hoping it was going to be Wednesday. So it's going to go direct on, and really for all intents and purposes this week be stationary from the way that our view of it goes direct on the 25th. I've talked about what this week feels like energetically with regard to this birth canal coming out of the eclipses in Mercury retrograde 2 videos ago. So the last video was the full moon in Scorpio. The video before that was the birth canal, trying to ground us to the energies as we go through this week and finally put behind us the eclipses in Mercury retrograde, certainly by the time we get to about the 28th or so. So if we give Mercury just a couple of days to start to actually move forward, we can assume that some of the Mercury retrograde related topics, conversations, downloads, irritations will start to be behind us by the end of this week. And I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more, because that particular video, the birth canal, was really, there was an acknowledgement that the full moon in Scorpio video had to take into account the fact that it was related to the May 7th Taurus new moon. And there was an awareness that we were now starting to look ahead, but I really felt that it was important before doing that with that birth canal video to ground us with regard to where we are at currently, and indeed where we're going to continue to be for the remainder of this week. And by the time next week comes around and Venus enters the sign of Taurus on Monday, a week from today, and Mars enters the sign of Aries the day after that, and Mercury will finally be truly moving ahead, it is going to be a different energy. So we've got, and as we look ahead to this week, as I've mentioned to you, it is, astrologically, it is a challenging week. Also, as we look ahead towards the 28th of April, which puts us to Sunday, I believe, the coming Sunday, we've got Mars conjuncting Neptune. So the 3 astrological events, insofar as this is a general reading, are the full moon in Scorpio tomorrow, Mercury going direct on Thursday, the 25th of April, and on the 28th of April, Mars conjuncting Neptune. The full moon in Scorpio already covered in yesterday's video. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mercury going direct, although a lot of it has been covered in the last couple of videos. And then I'm going to spend some time on the Mars-Neptune conjunction with an acknowledgement that astrologically, especially as we factor in that Mars-Neptune conjunction, it is a more challenging week. And then starting next week, as Venus comes into Taurus, Mars comes into Aries, at least the energies start to shift. As Venus comes into Taurus, the very next day after Venus, I think it's on Tuesday, Venus is going to square Pluto. So we've got these Pluto squares that I talked about in yesterday's videos carrying on. But I'll talk about that more later on this week to kind of prepare us in that regard, and to bring us back to these Pluto squares. But let's continue on talking about this particular week that we're in. The full moon in Scorpio occurs just a few hours after the moon enters the sign of Scorpio, because it's in the early degrees of Scorpio. We're moving to a point where we're going to end up having 2 full moons in Capricorn a couple of months from now, in June and July. And so the moon is getting to be in the early degrees of each sign. And by the time we get to Capricorn, it's going to have to be within that first degree of Capricorn to have another full moon then in that last degree of Capricorn. 28 degrees, 28 days separate full moons. And so for 2 full moons to occur in a sign, you've got to have the first one occur right as the moon enters a particular sign, and the second one to enter right as the moon's getting ready to leave the sign. So the full moon occurs relatively early as it enters Scorpio, which means that the weekend and today, Monday for me, Pacific time, April the 22nd, the moon going through Libra, pretty full. We will have started to feel the full moon in Scorpio, but the moon going through Libra also harkens back to processing the May 25th eclipse. So if you found yourself over the past 48 hours and over the next 24 hours in the space of that eclipse, and again, it's very relevant to this week of being in this place of rumination, processing. What doors have the eclipses closed? What doors have the eclipses opened? What has Mercury retrograde brought to light for you that had been in your blind spot, so that you actually go back to the drawing board and figure out how you're going to move forward and factor that in? With Mercury retrograde, as I've said, things that are in our blind spot become clearer to us. Mercury retrograde makes them visible to us. And if there's something that we're intuitively feeling, Mercury retrograde tries to bring some grounding to that by making clear what might actually be going on and whether those intuitive hits have some basis or not. And even if they have some bits, are they as big and 7 of Cupsy, if you know the tarot, and kind of full of kind of questions as to with this happening, that happening, what does all this mean, or are they what's actually going on with those intuitive hits? All of that causes us during Mercury retrograde to go back to the drawing board, as I've said, to figure out whether the eggs, the baskets in which we've been putting our eggs, whether we want to continue to invest in them or not, whether we just kind of want to acknowledge that we've gotten what we wanted to get out of them and it's time to move on to fresher pastures. All of that. The argument is that as the personal planets and Mercury are moving forward with some speed, January, February, March, we naturally are moving forward. But in that process, things get skipped and missed or may not be entirely clear. And so the Mercury retrograde occurs to make things that are in our blind spot visible to us, make things that we might have an intuitive sense of become clearer so that we can factor those in as we move forward. It's the days when Mercury is going retrograde and direct, and Mercury is conjuncting the sun when it's retrograde, that we feel the impact of this the most. Mercury went retrograde on April the 1st. Mercury goes direct on April the 25th, as you know. So as we head towards the 25th, as I've said in the last couple of videos, topics and conversations that came up around April the 1st may feel very resonant. They could have to do with the full moon in Scorpio. They could have to do with the Mars-Neptune conjunction. It doesn't have to be related to the Aries part of the chart alone. When you have these kinds of, it's a cohesive narrative. It's not about what's going on in the sign of Sagittarius or Capricorn or Taurus, that's the wrong, or Virgo or Leo. That's not, it is confined to those signs where significant events are taking place. I excused myself with Taurus because we just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction a couple of days ago. But the bottom line is, as this week continues, the energies related to the full moon in Scorpio and Mercury going direct in Aries and that Mars-Neptune conjunction in Pisces, it'll all sort of be boiling away in this full moony mass. With Mercury going direct, always keep in mind, especially the dates when Mercury goes retrograde and direct, that is when the infamous Mercury retrograde stationary issues, technology breakdowns, delays, computer breakdowns, travel issues, lost baggage, peculiar conversations with customer service, things not making sense, all that kind of stuff is at its peak. So another reason to try and take it a little bit easier this week and make our way to about April the 28th or so, or even just into next week. Let that Mars-Neptune conjunction finish up. The full moon is in Scorpio. It's so interesting. For me, Scorpio is in my 4th house, and I have had the last 24 hours and even today just the hardest time getting anything to, it exaggerates our feelings or our sentiments or our energy in the part of the chart where it's going full. And it has just been, I am astonished by where this day has gone. And it's not as if I'm not getting work done, but I really had to, I'm doing this video, I'm going to process it. I did a reading earlier today. I've answered all the mail that I needed to answer. I'm going to do some grocery shopping. But the things I really wanted to get done, and what I would expect with a full moon, an unwieldiness of energies and a hyperness and a long to-do list, and me just kind of hurtling my way through them, it has certainly been an energetic peaking and a hurtling, but it has been in from a 4th house perspective, the 4th house being home and foundation and a much more introverted internal energy. The full moon also trines my natal Saturn in the 12th house. So it has it's been the most astonishingly almost sort of hyper. If I could have spent the entire day in bed, sleeping, resting under the covers, I really would have. That's where my energy has been. It's as if the full moon has kind of pushed those energies to the max. And I am looking forward to doing this and making dinner and just kind of, going with that energy and trying to rest and recuperate. As I've mentioned to you, after the full moon occurs, the week after the full moon can be ideal balanced energy. You're not dealing with this kind of pull of energy in a certain direction, having to navigate that. The energy balances out and you can find yourself much more productive with regard to getting things done. So the full moon video already done yesterday, this idea of the birth canal entering into the week of March 17th or so, opportunities showing up, doors opening, the ones that feel right for us and are beckoning us forward with this eclipsy acceleration and clarity remaining open for now at least, whatever guise they turn into as time goes on. Doors closing, we entered the eclipse area with a certain amount of confusion. Which way do I go? By now, I would imagine we have a certain amount of clarity around that. What we are doing this week is waiting for the uncomfortableness of this stagnant Mercury energy and this closing out of what needs to be processed and assimilated and left behind, even released, insofar as the full moon is tomorrow, but we still have a pretty large moon going through Libra right now. And so hearkening back to And so hearkening back to that Libra eclipse of release on March the 25th, processing what it is that needs to be released. We go into Mercury going direct or being stationary till the 25th, expecting snafus, expecting topics around April the 1st to come up. We move forward towards Sunday with that Mars-Neptune conjunction, and we are through the birth canal. And there's a separate video prior to the full moon that we can look at for the birth canal. This brings us to the third astrological event, which is that Mars-Neptune conjunction in Pisces, which is, out of all the astrological events this week, the one that I have given you the least bit of information on. The Pisces part of the chart, as I've reminded you, is where we have likely faced some sort of crisis of nebulousness, and I'm going to expand on that in a second, especially peaking in 2014-15, but especially 16-17. Now, with Neptune's transit through Pisces, depending on where the sign of Pisces in your chart, the house that Pisces occupies, and what and who that stands for, if the Neptunian influence has led you into a more creative, artistic, spiritual direction, then some of that peaking and some of the transits since then, and particularly Saturn's arrival into Pisces in March 2023, and Mars's recent month and a half arrival and transit through Pisces are going to, but not just that, prior to that, Venus and Mercury and the Sun will have given you the impetus to start to put some structure around, some stability around, to get real around those spiritual and artistic goals. For those of us where the crisis that was created involves a sense of loss, a loosening of attachments related to the Pisces part of the chart. Remember, with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they are loosening attachments to things that are not right for us. But their way of doing it is different. Uranus does it through connecting you to your authenticity in a really powerful way. Pluto removes things slowly and gradually and releases those attachments as a kind of a separating you from them. With Neptune, there can be themes of deception and, I hate to use this word, but there's some truth to this, a kind of a loosening of our attachments, a letting go, an understanding of where our source is. With Neptune, some of the things that we are loosening, and they might be meant for other, Neptune's way of doing that could be through theft or deception or gaslighting behavior or fogginess or our own confusion, our inability to get a handle on things that are happening in the Pisces part of the chart. But in loosening that, it is, number one, most importantly, reminding us that we come in with nothing and we release with nothing. So nothing and nobody is really ours. Very, in terms of Neptunian spirituality, in terms of Neptunian ideas of renunciation and bliss and union with the sort of divine, the dissolution of boundaries and borders. That idea that nobody and nothing is really ours, and we come in with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing. So just watch your attachment monitor. Neptune's ways of dealing with that kind of processing can be challenging and hurtful and confusing, because we are on a day-to-day basis, and we are also constantly trying to get a sense of, because we're in relationship with things and people, as to where our boundaries are and implementing them and being in conversation, communication with those on an ongoing basis. You know, as we say, our sort of success on this planet is often directly linked to the success of our relationships, and boundaries are a critical component of that. So when Neptune starts to play havoc in this area, it impacts our attachments and our relationships, and Neptune's kind of shady ways of doing so are just really hard. You know, it's like pinning jello to a wall. There's a lack of stability and a lack of structure around those things. as I've mentioned, whether you are constructively moving towards artistic or spiritual goals in the Pisces part of the chart, or finding that since Saturn's entry into Pisces in March 2023, things are becoming real, concrete, and you are addressing boundaries and building a foundation and stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart and addressing what needs to be addressed with a sense of responsibility, with a sense of seriousness, with a sense of honoring your own potential. Whether it is taking care of issues that are in your power to do so and put some structure around responsibly in a way that you haven't prior to March 2023, or whether it is setting the boundaries that you need to set, letting go of what you need to let go of, building on what you need to build on. And as we head to the second half of this year and we have the first of the North Node eclipses into Pisces, we're going to lean into the Pisces, but it's not just going to be about releasing. Outside of this idea of nothing and nobody being ours, Neptune's transits, as I said, also tries to remind us as to where our source is. So if we are really attached to something material, it's a Neptune's way of saying it's not for you to figure out where certain things are going to come from. So if something that is being loosened is stressful because you are really hoping to build a life with a certain partner, or you were really hoping that you would build a home somewhere, or that you would continue to do the work in a certain company, or continue to work with a certain group of people, it's as if Neptune's saying, it's not source will provide in source's way. What you think you're going to get from a particular place, if that place is not the right place for you and Neptune is losing those boundaries, don't remember where your source is. And remember to release what Neptune is trying to get you to release so that source can also provide and you can let go of what you need to let go. Easier said than done. Now, we have had, because Mars and the Sun and Mercury and Venus have been traveling together, and because Mars goes over Pisces every couple of years, goes over every sign, every house in your chart every couple of years, this year we had, as the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Neptune, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars have gone through Pisces this year, they conjuncted Saturn and then Neptune. Indeed, at the end of February, we had the Sun, Mercury conjuncting Saturn on the same day. That was February the 28th. Now, Mercury was the first planet to conjunct Neptune on March the 8th. The Sun conjuncted Neptune on March the 17th. Venus conjuncted Neptune on April the 3rd. That's the one I want you to put a pin on. And Mars conjuncts Neptune April the 29th. With Mercury conjuncting Neptune on March the 8th, after conjuncting Saturn on February the 28th, communications around managing Neptune's transit through Pisces. And I say managing because of Saturn's presence in Pisces and the fact that these planets were in conversation with Saturn and then Neptune. There's greater structure, greater power, greater agency, greater reality in the sign of Pisces since March 2023 than there has been in a long time. Certainly going back 10 years, even to 2013. 2012, 2013. So this year, the transits, these personal planet transits, the Sun going through Pisces, the new moon in Pisces, Mercury, Venus, Mars, are much more around grappling with and providing stability to this part of the chart, whether it is goals and structure and plans related to Neptunian goals, artistic or spiritual, or whether it is getting real about and asserting boundaries and releasing what needs to be released or protecting what needs to be protected in the Pisces part of the chart. Communications around it came first around March the 8th. Awareness of what is going on around March the 17th. at around the time when Mercury went retrograde, April the 1st, there may have been a communication that was diplomatic, relationship building, but also identified what it is of value, Venus conjuncting Neptune, that is at the heart or the center of the discussion and the contemplation this year. Now, with Venus conjuncting Neptune, if you are moving in an artistic direction, beginning of April, you may have, and the reason why I say April the 1st, it's never the date of the conjunction, my dears. It is leading up to it by about 5, 6, 7 days. So it's when, really things start to become concrete, and events might occur not on April the 3rd when Venus conjuncts Neptune, but maybe the 5 to 7 days within the 5 before that, as the planet is approaching. So that's why I'm looking at that April 1st Mercury retrograde date. Did some conversation come up? It could be multiple conversations. For me, April the 1st brought up 2 or 3 events that I'm going to just be gently tracking as this week goes on to see what it is that I'm going to put a question mark around. What is that I'm going to put on? Will this come up again? Is there something here I need to do? Something here I need to deal with? Going into Mercury retrograde, we are much more communication happy and communication friendly. This week, at least for myself, I am likely just going to want to be in observation, because I know that communicating, settling things, while Mercury is so slow and about to go direct, it's just, by the time it goes direct and starts to gather some momentum, it's likely that things are going to change. So why not wait for Mercury to be moving ahead or moving direct, for Venus to enter Taurus, for Mars to come, why not wait for the energy to clear? And why not wait till I am in a clearer place? Because the energies this week seem to be so foggy and challenging anyway. When a planet is about 5 degrees away to an approaching conjunction is when I really start to pay attention to it. But depending on the size of the planet, depending on the strength, depending on how far away it is, in some planets you may want to loosen it to about 7 to 10 degrees. I tend to stick to about 5 degrees. In Mars conjunct Neptune case, we're already sensing what this might be. But it's the Venus conjunct Neptune that identified what is of value, what is of discussion, what is of value, what is at stake from a relationship perspective, from a financial perspective. And with Mars getting ready to conjunct Neptune. Now, if it is the first scenario where you are creating plans and putting a structure around spiritual artistic goals in the Pisces part of the chart, then Mars conjunct Neptune will give you the firepower to do so, to take action towards your goals. You may choose not to take action or may not have the mental clarity quite to take action this week or the energy to take action this week given everything that is going on. You may still be focused this week because it is an ideal week to focus on cleaning things up and sorting things out so that by the time we're through the birth canal of Mercury going direct and saying goodbye to this period we entered around March the 17th of the eclipses and Mercury going retrograde, and have a sense of the direction we want to move in and want to accelerate towards that direction by the end of April, beginning of May, and especially after the May 7th new moon in Taurus. By the time we get to, this week could be an ideal week to continue to sort out and lighten and clear our plates of things so that by the time we get to beyond this week, we are much clearer and can actually start to incorporate forward-looking activities into our to-do list. And Mars conjunct Neptune with artistic or spiritual goals can, remember with Mars, it is pursuit of goals, hunting, gathering, taking action. It's the male yang energy planet, and it is also boundaries, conflict, competition. Who is getting in the way of you pursuing certain goals? And what is the nature of that interaction going to be? With Mars, assertive, Mars comes with its shadow side, which can be aggression and even violence. So assertive is better than aggressive depending on the situation. Actually, not depending on the situation. Assertive is better than aggressive when it comes to Mars. Because you also don't want to attract aggression. You may choose to, insofar as something was identified. Now, when it comes to the energies of this week, you are going to have to determine based on what is going on for you with regard to how active and yang you're going to be versus how yin you're going to be. I mean, you're going to have to determine as the week progresses how much you're going to be in a ruminative processing mode, coming back to yourself, processing what the eclipses have brought for you, processing how you feel decisive about how you want to move forward, processing and waiting for Mercury to clear its retrograde and start to slowly move direct by April the 28th and be in a place of observation. You can choose to not be overactive with regard to communication. In certain cases, you may feel compelled and you may find that you're participating in a certain amount of communication and transactions as they relate back to whatever April 1st was about, whatever came up around that time. And if it feels right to do so, it might allow you to put a parenthesis or close out something that started around that time and be done with it and to move past it and to push it behind you. Some of you who are choosing to be more yin this week and more processing may choose to take action, communication action, etc., starting next week. Once you feel like the energies return, you may choose to just be in processing and observation mode and taking action on cleaning things up and taking care of clearing your plate so that you can start to move forward much more and incorporate more forward-moving activities starting next week. But when it comes to the Mars-Neptune conjunction, if you are not dealing with the first issue of artistic and spiritual goals in the Pisces part of the chart, but are dealing with some form of fogginess or deception, it's one of two things which could be related. One, someone may put into action, or you may get a sense that someone is starting to take action towards I'm trying to find the right word, but I'm just going to jump in. Stealing, taking, whatever was identified with that Venus-Neptune conjunction, April 1st, you may feel that with this Mars, there's an assertion and aggression from another party towards grabbing it. And in that process, you may feel that you have to put certain things in place and you have to act. The Mars-Neptune conjunction could mean that the Mars energy is coming from outside, or it could be yours, or it could be a clash around it. We know that the Mars-Neptune energy, if it's in the pursuit of spiritual and artistic goals, could be constructive in a lot of ways to concretize, plan, take action around those goals. When it is the deception side of things, it is a clearer indication of competition and assertion and those kinds of, as I've mentioned to you about earlier this year, it's as if you can see with much greater clarity where you are where things are foggy, where they are unclear, where they are nebulous, and who is keeping them in that space. Who is lying to you? What is at stake? What are they trying to do that might be hurtful to you? And it will have a thematic resonance to the Neptunian gaslighty, deceptiveness, fogginess that goes all the way back to 2013, 14, 15, especially 16, 17. The theme of the topic may come up this time around because Mars picks up on its conjunction with Saturn on April the 10th. As you were heading towards April the 10th, which was the day when a retrograde Mercury conjuncted the Sun in Aries, April 10th, 11th, Mars picks up on that conversation with Saturn, conjuncts Neptune as if to say, If you choose to keep this week in observation mode, you will already have an awareness, and the awareness is going to build as the week goes on around who is getting ready to, planning to, putting something in place to pick your pocket. You may choose to remain in observation mode and deal with it in the weeks coming forward, or you may feel compelled. You may feel compelled to address it. I mean, it's the best I can do insofar as this is a general reading, right? So the Mars-Neptune conjunction is certainly, can be a conjunction of conflict in a foggy, nebulous, gaslighty, not entirely truthful, not entirely fact-based way. Is it coming from someone? As I've mentioned, if you have Neptune transiting the first, second, third house, it could be that other people are perceiving you as somehow being Neptunian, playing your cards close to the chest, doing something under the surface, moving towards what you want in a way. It doesn't have to be malicious as much as it creates confusion for other people. It's a tricky energy. And with Mars conjunct Neptune, depending where it's occurring, also just keep in mind and be careful of things like accidents and that occur in weird Neptunian ways, you know, or you hear about someone getting in an accident, you're wondering, how did this happen? What exactly happened? You know, this it creates these, there's some event that happens, some sort of accident, could be a physical accident, could be a Mars-related activity, and we're all scratching our heads around, how is it that the details on this are not clear? I told you this is a tricky week. It's an uncomfortable week. It's a necessary week. I wish that it had been just a little bit more blessed. In the last week, with Venus exercising so much influence, however much anxiety last week we were starting to feel with the Sun entering Taurus and getting ready to square Pluto, which it did yesterday, and it brought up this awareness of, oh, how do we support? And with the full moon tomorrow, bringing the awareness of how do we, and that's why I titled the full moon video Awareness. How do we, in the Taurus and the Scorpio part of the chart, support Pluto's transformation in the Aquarius part of the chart, going back to the messages that we may have gotten from Jan 20th to Feb 20th or thereabouts? Right now it's in the realm of awareness. As this week continues and we head towards Tuesday after, as we head towards about the April the 30th, Venus is we're going to be much more conscious again of what we are protecting. We may find that we have diplomacy at our disposal. We may find that opportunities are coming up that give us a sense of, oh, if we avail of these, and then if we actually take action in that arena, it will help Pluto create the transformation that it's trying to create in the Aquarius part of the chart. We may be required to act in a Venusian way as this week progresses. But with all of that going on, part of the challenge of this week is logistical, with Mercury being stationary. Part of the challenge entering this week is that we might be, with the moon being relatively full in Libra, processing that Libra eclipse on the 25th and what we've been releasing since October 14th of 2023, when the first solar eclipse in Libra happened. We entered this week, the moon enters Scorpio, it's full, the energies are jangly and unwieldy, whether in a yang way, if you're having the full moon in your 10th house or your first house or your third house, or whether in a yin way, if you're having the full moon in your 12th house, or like me in the 4th house. And the energies are just toppling over related to the energy of where Scorpio is in your chart, kind of demanding, just kind of pulling you. It's like the full moon pulling a tide. And I can honestly say today has been, I was just astonishing. I was just like, this is just absurd. The only thing that I really wanted to do was just crawl under the covers, and it was almost tidal, the sort of desire for fourth house activities, bake some brownies, it was just like stay close to home, be in processing mode. Not going to be true for everybody, depending on where Scorpio sits in your chart. Logistical challenges, revisiting conversations related to April the 1st, while Mercury has been retrograde. Processing the fact that this Mercury retrograde, the conjunction to the North Node has been so important, but especially the conjunctions to Chiron 3 times in Aries. We're in the solar eclipse and the new moon cycle of the Aries new moon solar eclipse on April the 8th, which was conjunct Chiron. A lot to process and take in, a lot to settle, so that as we get past April the 28th, we can start forward movement in alignment with that April 8th eclipse. But also dealing with our own desire and our own relationship with how much we should be in communication this week, how much action we should be taking. This is part of the reason why I keep saying, in some ways, doing cleanup stuff and clearing your plate is so much more favored. But then also, most comfortably, if you are pursuing artistic and spiritual goals in the Pisces part of the chart, and most uncomfortably, if you're feeling like your pockets have been picked, or there's a fogginess or a nebulousness, or things are not clear, that people are not playing their cards openly in the Pisces part of your chart. This week is going to light a bit of fire under our butts, around this particular issue. And the drive is going to be that much stronger, and we have that much more firepower with regard to settling things, making decisions around it, rather than staying in a foggy, nebulous space, whether it is in the pursuit of artistic or spiritual goals, or handling fogginess from other people, or if it's in our case, we may be challenged to cut bait, release things that are draining our energy. Remember the Pisces part of the chart, it really has been an energy leak since 2013, 14, 15, especially 16, 17. Putting some structure around things, managing them, taking care of them, and it is going to be up to us as to whether we decide that we're going to jump in the pool and start to take those actions around them by the end of this week, by the 29th, when Mars conjuncts Neptune, or the 28th, sorry, or whether we're going to observe somebody else coming in to challenge us in a Neptunian way this week and decide that we're going to take action after this week is done. Depending on the situation, it's going to be a very personal decision with regard to how you're going to deal with it. I suspect, given the fact that it's Mars conjuncting Neptune, I think that you're certainly going to have the energy to, by the end of this week, if you decide that, I'll be surprised if some sort of action is not taken. But at the very least, my expectation is that you will commit to handling and tackling the fogginess in the Pisces part of the chart by the end of this week. In a kind of, enough is enough, this is what needs to be done, this is what I'm taking care of, this is how we're handling it, this is how we're moving forward. Enough with the BS kind of attitude. A little bit of housekeeping. I mentioned in my last video that I had activated the thanks button. Please know that no one is obligated to use it. I'm putting this content out there. It's just part of, recently the channel became eligible for monetization. It was really more of a way of acknowledging this community's support of that process and alerting me to things. As I said, if you had not alerted me to that, I would not have activated it. So whether you choose to use it or not is up to you. There's no pressure from my side. There's no expectation from my side. Just it, whatever, it's there, and you can take it from there. If you found this video useful, take it easy this week. Keep your hand on the steering wheel. We've gone through we're getting past this week. Since March the 15th, 17th, don't underestimate. We really did enter that time period with a sense of, I don't know how quite to move forward. I don't know which direction I'm going. I don't know what to tackle. And by this point in time, we do. This is not a week to be impatient. This is a week to relish observation, closing out the eclipses, closing out Mercury retrograde, processing what was in our blind spot and has become clear and visible since the beginning of April. Remember, this is the week where we continue to be, insofar as the Hanged Man is the card for April, we continue to be in this mode till the 30th. We continue to be in this mode this week, letting our crown chakra be illuminated, processing, thinking about everything that has been revealed to us that was in our blind spot, thinking about what it is, where it is that we have intuitive clarity around those things that were intuitively bothering us with regard to just how big and messy they really are or aren't. We might have been intuitively correct, but it might not be this flare-up that we thought. What exactly is, and continue to process. We have the sense of direction. We just want this week to, don't rush through this week so that we miss out on any gifts, whether it is through conversation related to topics related to April the 1st, whether it is flare-ups related to the full moon, whatever it is that the Mars-Neptune conjunction is going to bring. Don't try to move so fast through this week that you are not letting this week. We've made it so far since the middle of March. Let this week continue to give you the gifts of this time period, understanding that as we head towards April the 25th and wait for Mercury to gather some speed till April the 28th, that it might be kind of a jangly, jarry week. And especially if offers and things come up as you head towards the 28th, make sure that the details are in place and understand that what you know about, especially if it looks good and something you're going to pursue, etc., just know that details around it might shift and might be different as you move past the 28th and into May. And again, it's not always neglect or deception. It could just be that people were processing information a certain way, and then after, the 25th to the 28th, as we head into May, people are being able to see certain things with greater clarity. And themselves are getting clarity, which is affecting plans and planning moving forward. With the Mars-Neptune conjunction, understand that stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart is a priority. And whether you actually choose to take action towards spiritual or artistic goals in the Pisces part of the chart, or address conflict deception in it, at the very least, I would imagine you will be very much in an observation and processing mode with regard to what it is that is going on, with so much more clarity than you have been able to do in the past decade. That whether you choose to take action as you're heading towards the end of this week, and it might be where, Mercury goes direct on the 25th. So if you feel like you need to be in action 27th, 28th, 29th as you head towards the 29th, that could be a time when at least you know that Mercury is not retrograde or completely stationary. You may choose to introduce a topic of conversation. You may choose to you may intervene in some way with a greater sense of the conversations, etc., to occur after next week. And also in the middle of all of this, because it is important, contemplate what the Sun and Venus and Mercury and Mars, and this goes back to my yesterday video on the full moon in Scorpio, as they square Pluto, what those squares could be about. Knowing that in a month's time, those squares are going to start to turn into trines in a very powerful way. In a very powerful way. Because the Sun and Jupiter and Venus enter Gemini around the same time, and they're all going to trine Pluto. And that full moon in Sagittarius, 28 days after tomorrow, is going to be opposing the Sun, Venus, and Jupiter trining Pluto. A lot to think about. Hence the contemplative nature of this week potentially. Take it easy. It's a jangly week. But, you know, sometimes you never know. It's always sort of a mixed bag. All right. Well, if you found this video useful, you're welcome to share, tell your friends, etc. about it. By all means, get the word out. It helps the channel. Like, comment. If you feel so inclined, like the video, comment on it. It increases circulation. If you're interested in getting a personal reading of your natal chart and the transits related to that are going over your natal chart with me, you can find my email address in the description box below, and you can email me there for rates and greater details and information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already and you'd like to. Next to the subscribe button, there's a bell. If you hover over that, there's a wiggly bell on top. Click on that and you'll be notified when I do new videos. I might, as I said, take a break for about a couple of days. Let us all digest this, start to move towards this week. I suspect that actually I'm going to want to address that Venus-Pluto square that occurs around the 29th, occurs on the 30th first. And then I think we need to talk about sort of the remaining conjunctions, specifically Mars conjuncting the North Node and Chiron in Aries in May. And you know, start to do some videos around that as we head to the end of this week. Okay. Have a great week. Thanks. Take care.